It is Friday, April 26th. Let's talk PlayStation. Now, unfortunately, as of filming this, we still don't know what those May PlayStation Plus games are going to look like, so for your final April 2019 reminder, you are getting Conan Exiles and The Surge for the Instant Game Collection. You have until May to download these games, do so if you have not already. Now, for our first news story, we're going to go right into the cover and thumbnail. I don't want to come off as clickbaity, we'll explain this right away, but this is a rumor that I'm not seeing almost anybody really talk about, and it does fascinate me on a number of levels, but basically, and this is actually somewhat old, so nobody really saw it last week, and that's why I'm just now finding out about this, but on the PS5 subreddit, there was a typical post about the PlayStation 5 price, rumor, of course, we don't necessarily know. We've talked about this before, we all feel as though it's probably around the $500 range. Most people are kind of accepting that, but again, still rumor. Well, anyway, in this particular thread, if you go down a little bit, there is a post from a new user with a really weird username. I can't even really say it, but if you reverse the username, actually, it turns out to say Samsung Sony. And it's a rumor dump, more or less, of PlayStation 5 specifications and storage and a PS4 refresh. And he does say refresh, but certainly that probably implies a PS4 Super Slim of some sort, which is why I've titled the video Super Slim, because let's be honest, even though he's calling it refresh, if this is an actual body redesign of the PS4 where it actually gets a little bit smaller, this is the nomenclature we know of with PlayStation 3, where it was PS3, PS3 Slim, and PS3 Super Slim. So surely, if this happens again with PS4, it's going to be called PS4 Super Slim. So this is interesting on a number of levels. But I should clarify first, the reason why I'm including this, because yes, it's just a random post from a brand new user on Reddit, so certainly it could be totally BS, as we often discuss with these rumors. But I'm including it for two main reasons. Number one being that the PS5 rumors that we've heard so far have actually mostly been true. Almost all of them have been dead on, actually, which is surprising. I mean, normally one or two things that we hear throughout the games industry, maybe one of them are false or one of them is way off the cusp, but we just got those official PS5 details from Mark Cerny himself from that Wired.com article. So that right there tells us that any other rumors that we might hear later on could also possibly be true, not just regarding PS5, but maybe what else Sony is doing in terms of their business. And then in terms of the PS4 refresh part of the rumor, initially I thought, that's probably not true, but then I thought, well, let's look at history for a second here. The last three PlayStation revisions we've had have all been leaked, and they've been substantially leaked. I mean, we've gotten pictures of the console before Sony actually told us about it months prior. This happened with PS3 Super Slim, PS3 Slim, PS3 Super Slim, and then the PS4 Slim. PS4 Pro, we had rumors regarding PS4 Pro, but we didn't get anything major, and I would assume that's because Sony kept that console a bit more under wraps, because it was kind of a big deal at the time, because it was a mid-cycle update, and there was the whole situation of Sony actually doing a press event to talk about the system, discuss the compatibility of it and whatnot. But it seems like whenever there's a revision of the console where they slim down the box and the power consumption and things like that, it seems almost like they don't care, and that's why those leaks happen. So that's why I'm thinking, well, even if this is some random Reddit post and it could totally be false, it's not out of the ordinary to think that this could possibly be something that we can expect in the future. And I also want to point out that during our 2019 PlayStation predictions that I did on this channel, at the start of this year, I predicted a PS4 Super Slim, because it's not unheard of. Sony has been doing this lately. And it just seems to make sense. Slim down the box, bring down the price, and bolster it a little bit. Give it that one last booster shot as we start talking about next gen, which they're probably going to do. So anyway, we didn't actually discuss the rumor. So the post says we can expect this sometime between September and November. It'll be $200, so that's pretty aggressive. It'll be using a Samsung 7nm EUV, which currently PS4 Slim is 16nm, and then the die size apparently is also going to be 110mm, which I believe is also substantially smaller as well. That's implying that this will be an actual major console revision to where the box is slimmed down, you get a new case, so not necessarily one of those small incremental updates where you get maybe a lower power consumption or something like that, but the box stays relatively the same design. This looks like it is going to be a dramatically changed box. He also said there will not be a Pro refresh, because apparently it's not financially viable just yet, but he is saying yet, which maybe says that we will get one next year or something like that. I actually was expecting a Pro refresh this year. That was also part of my predictions, but maybe we will not get that now. And then the second part of his post is about PS5's memory and storage systems, and there's a lot more details that are posted here, but it's a bit lengthy. We can't really cover the whole thing. We'll spend too much time talking about that. And this kind of information is harder to corroborate. Like, even when Sony tells us more about PlayStation 5, they may not tell us this detailed of information, so it'd be harder to look back on this and see what was right and what was wrong. But certainly we will keep this track record, so when Sony decides to tell us more about the PS5 specifications, we will talk about that. But some of the key standouts I noticed in this list were 24 gigabytes of RAM in total, 20 gigabytes usable by games, which is a bit weird because it's not totally unified. It's not one big pool, it's separated. A bit conflicting in terms of how Mark Cerny approached the PS4 initially, so not sure how to take that. He also says HBM is more power efficient compared to GDDR6. The savings were invested into more GPU power. The memory is automatically managed by HBCC and appears as 20 gigabytes to the developers. Developers can use the API to take control if they choose and manage the memory and storage streaming themselves. But this solution apparently alleviates problems found in PS4. Like I said, we'll keep our eyes peeled on this information until Sony gives us more details about PS5, which we won't get, of course, until they do some sort of major press event the later half of 2019, possibly even the beginning half of 2020, but I'm still thinking that we might get a PSX this year, and that's where you'd see the PS5 stuff, and the PS4 Super Slim might be part of that event, but if it's possibly between September and November, that's actually before PSX, so they might just do a standard blog post or press release saying, hey, new PS4 console hits stores right away, which is what they do with the Slim consoles, basically. They're almost available immediately at retail right away, which also means that we'll probably just get more leaks prior to that actually happening, so we'll find out about that much sooner than PS5 stuff. Now, while we're on the topic of next gen, that's actually a good segue into our next news story, which is about that PS5 reveal, why it was so informal and it wasn't more of a major press event. Jason Schreier from Kotaku recently said in the Split Screen podcast that, from what he's heard in the games industry, it's because Sony sent out a lot of dev kits to third-party developers, and they just wanted to beat the leaks more or less. They wanted to do it on their own terms, clear up those major details in a small little Q&A, because they're not ready to do that press event just yet, or at least that's what I would assume. And a lot of people are saying this, and they're a little alarmed, thinking, wow, third parties are just now getting their dev kits. Well, keep in mind, we've already had PS5 rumors prior to all this happening, which means that probably a lot of, well, higher profile publishers and developers have already had those dev kits, and that's why we've had these small little tidbits of rumors here and there that seem very unsubstantiated, even though they were actually true. So I think this is a situation where it sounds like it's more widespread, like this month, a lot of dev kits went out, and so that's why Sony did this small little article. Makes sense, I guess. So we will get that major reveal at some point, but that's why we got that very weird article. So we're certainly not going to ignore this elephant in the room here, but the Days Gone reviews are out, and the game is out, and mixed reviews. Certainly not bad by any stretch. The game is getting, anywhere from comparable to good scores. Some people, they're saying it's great. It's a game that resonates with some people and not with others. That's how you have to look at it with this stuff. I mean, gamers are so irrational sometimes. If a game doesn't get 9s across the board, it's pretty much considered a bad game, which I really hate that sort of culture to it, but that's kind of how it goes sometimes. This very much so reminds me of the Order 1886, where that game comes out, mixed reviews. I don't think it's bad. By no imagination is it a bad game. It looks beautiful, it's got a compelling narrative, the gameplay's hit or miss, it certainly has its issues, but it's a game that comes out, gets blasted, and then 2-3 years later you can buy it for $5 to $10 in a bargain bin. People buy it then, and they go, oh man, I'm really enjoying this game, why did it get such bad reviews? Unfortunately, it looks like that's where Days Gone is now going to find itself, where it's being reported about some inconsistencies in the narrative, and technical issues. Who knows? I mean, I'll get the game at some point. Now, I'm just not going to jump right on it. I'll give it a little bit of time. I'm playing other things right now, so that's at least where I fall with the game. Still looks very good. I'm sure I will enjoy it for sure. I have a higher threshold when it comes to games that might not be seen as incredible. I enjoy all walks of life when it comes to video games, certainly. So that's just how I see it. But honestly, you have to look at it this way. A review is just one guy's opinion, or one guy or gal's opinion. You have to look at a bunch of reviews and just draw your own conclusions of, hey, is this something that I might be into? That's how you have to look at it. It sucks that most people don't see it that way, but that's just the way it is. Now, for Sony Ben, different scenario. They had a lot riding on this game. This game needs to do well. Now, critically, not looking good. If the game still sells millions of copies, maybe they'll get a second chance out of Sony, but Sony has been very unforgiving lately with their first-party studios. Sony Ben's last game was Uncharted Golden Abyss. That was back in 2012. They've started and stopped projects over and over until they landed on Days Gone. We've heard about that from some interviews. So this is a bit unfortunate now. So we'll have to wait and see what happens to Sony Ben. But some actual Days Gone news is that there is going to be some post-launch DLC. That's free, of course. So you're going to get a new survival mode that takes away the fast traveling and the HUD. You're going to get some new dynamic modes. That's like some challenge rooms or something. Well, I say that loosely, challenge rooms, but certain challenge obstacles in the game that you can play. So if you do pick up the game, there's some stuff that you can look forward to. Now, for our next news story, it's nothing major, but if you live in Japan and you have a PS3 Slim or a PSP 3000, your time is running up to get your consoles repaired, because by May 31st, you cannot put in a repair request for either of these systems, because Sony Japan admitted, we're running out of parts to repair these things. So that's the issue with that. And the only reason why I even mention this is because I found it so miraculous that last year is when Sony Japan ceased support for PlayStation 2 repairs. If you didn't see that, yeah, that was the case. I think it was September 2018 was the deadline for PlayStation 2 repairs in Japan, which is nuts. But this time, PS3 Slim console specifically, and PSP 3000, Sony's running out of parts in that territory. So that's where, if you're in a unique scenario where you need it repaired, go ahead and do that right now. So much like many of you have noticed and even gone as far to call me a cultured man for my taste in Persona 5, which, yes, of course I like Persona 5. Who doesn't like Persona 5? But this past week we actually got some major details about Persona 5 The Royal, and we know what Persona 5 S is, which it's Persona 5 Scramble, which is like a Dynasty Warriors clone, more or less. And I hate to say clone, but more or less that's like what the gameplay is looking at. That's going to be on Switch and PS4. So unfortunately, Switch owners, you're not getting a Persona 5 port. And Persona 5 The Royal is going to essentially focus on the third semester of the game that we didn't see in the original base game. It only focused on the first two semesters. And we've got a new character, a new confidants, certainly a completely new arc in the story, new environments, things like that. Looks very cool. I'm very excited, no doubt about it. But that will only be for PlayStation 4. That's coming out the later half of this year, 2019, in Japan. But in the US, we'll expect it in 2020. Unfortunately, that's just the way it goes. But hey, at least we're getting it. We know it's coming, and the footage looks great. For our next news story, Hideo Kojima did an interview this past week where he discussed his belief in cloud gaming and how we could transition to it as early as 4 to 5 years from now. And he was quoted as saying, "Cloud gaming allows direct delivery of games on any screen, be it a smartphone, a tablet, or a laptop, without the need of consoles. Cloud gaming experienced a boom around 4 or 5 years ago, but there was no phenomenon carrying it. Many say it'll end in failure, but I think it didn't work out because the technology wasn't advanced enough. Now that 5G is launched, we'll see a huge shift to cloud gaming during the next 5 years." I find this fascinating only because it's coming from Kojima himself. I mean, Hideo, he's not dumb. He's been in the industry for such a long time. He's a famous game designer. He has inclinations of where the industry's moving towards, certainly. And he even said he has an idea for cloud gaming that he wants to do. He's a visionary. He certainly thinks about these things, but he also seemed like more of a grounded individual in the sense that he's realistic. And sure, he's very outlandish in the way he thinks and talks sometimes, and his game design reflects that as well. But I don't know. I just would think that he'd be more in the consumer mindset where it's like, no way is it going to be like the main way to play games in 5 years. Certainly, I think streaming has its time. I don't think it's within 5 years, and I think many people agree with that. It's just so interesting how you see every single person in the games industry that is of a high-ranking level, whether that's an executive, a major tech company, of course, a hardware manufacturer. Understandable, they want to be first to market. They want to be the next Netflix, the next Hulu, with the right technology, the right latency. They want to be first to market with that kind of stuff because obviously we've had streaming for a while now, but somebody wants to do it right first. They want to be the be-all, end-all service for everybody. So easy to see why they say it and they push for it. But consumers across the board are still not even remotely interested in it. It's just, I don't see how it's going to happen in 5 years. I could potentially see it in 10. I can't see it in 5. Anyway, moving on to our next news story. Sony has recently been celebrating the 2018 God of War's anniversary because it came out last year. And they've been doing a lot of cool things, like a theme on the PlayStation Store, stuff like that. Well, they recently announced that they're doing a documentary called Raising Kratos, which is going to be on their YouTube channel. They showed off a little teaser. They actually showed off a teaser that they haven't used for the game that was we've never seen before, so that was pretty cool. But it's going to follow the 3-year development cycle that they focused in on the development team. And I always love seeing stuff like this, so it looks like it's going to get very in-depth. Really focus on the art of making games. So just want to highlight that. Really give this a look when it comes out. You got to see what some of these people go through. It's very, very interesting stuff, I'm telling you. You got to see what it takes to make a game because it's so ambitious. It takes so much work, and keep your eyes peeled on that for sure. Now, for those Uncharted fans out there, the voice actor for Nathan Drake, Nolan North, recently said that he feels the ship for Uncharted 5 has kind of already sailed. During an interview with Only Single Player at the Supernova Comic-Con in Gaming, he was quoted as saying, "It wasn't until the 4th one kind of started that there's no 5th one and you're going, okay, what's next? But you don't want to jump the shark. It was bittersweet to end the franchise, but we're proud of what we made. And if that's the way Sony and Naughty Dog decide to leave it, then I'm fine with that." I'm still of the mind where if we're going to get another Uncharted, let it rest for quite a while until it comes back. I think 4 ended perfectly, and it was a good setup for whenever they want to revisit the franchise. I think that's the best way to end most IPs when you want them to be dormant for a little bit. Always leave a little bit of an entry for when you do decide to do it again 5, 10 plus years later, because that's realistically the most ideal scenario when you end it off on that kind of level. And based on 4's ending and also the Lost Legacy, many people are thinking, oh, well, we can do more Uncharted beyond Nathan Drake. That's kind of how they left it, which is fine. But still, don't revisit the franchise so soon. I mean, give it time. I mean, I'd certainly be very happy with an Uncharted game in 2022, 2023, like 2-3 years into the PS5's life cycle. I think that'd be kind of a great time to bring it back. It's at that point where the game was gone for such a long time that people are finally into it again, and they're like, oh yeah, I'd totally be down for another, action-packed, cinematic, Uncharted typical experience. And at that point of peak PlayStation 5 power, where developers are really, doing a lot with the SDK. I mean, depending on who's developing it, because certainly Sony might field it out to another developer at that point. It probably won't be Naughty Dog. They probably won't want to go back to an old IP. Naughty Dog's always trying to explore new stuff, and they'll definitely be doing something new after The Last of Us Part 2, so... But at that point, we'd probably see something very substantial, very different, and I think that would be a great time to bring back the franchise for sure. So we've got a new VR patent that recently surfaced this past week, and sure enough, it is for wireless technology, a PlayStation VR that is entirely wireless, more than likely for PlayStation 5. Obviously, Sony files a lot of patents. Normally, a lot of them we won't ever see come to fruition, but this is one where it probably is very likely going to hit PS5. And, we've talked about this prior where I'm like, I don't know if they're going to do wireless. That might make the headset too expensive. But to be fair, we still don't know where the timeline is in terms of when we get an announcement of PSVR 2, because do you do that right alongside the PS5 major reveal, like where we see the controller, the box, more specifications? I mean, do you announce it right away? Is it going to launch right alongside PS5? It's a more unique scenario because it's a peripheral that's not a peripheral. It's got its own set of games. It's going to be very expensive. Rumors are saying $250. That seems way too low to me, especially for a brand new headset that's going for a bigger field of view, a higher resolution, wireless technology. Sounds like it's going to jump back to the starting price point of at least $400. So it's weird. It's a weird timeline. We don't know where it's going to fall, but maybe it'll be a thing where PS5 comes out in 2020, whenever it decides to do so, probably the later half of 2020. And then do we not get PSVR 2 until maybe 2021, 2022? Or does it come out right away? If it comes out in 2021 or, later than that, that is where you might see the price to manufacture that headset come down, and that's where it could reasonably come out. But at the very least, we know that Sony is absolutely focusing on making this thing wireless, which makes it a lot more accessible because, man, we just did the VR video on Tuesday, and those wires really suck. Now, while speaking about VR, this is a good time to mention that for E3, we've got 2 conference announcements, one being a VR conference. So actually, Upload VR is doing kind of a pre-recorded conference that's going to be kind of a sizzle reel of game announcements from not just HTC Vive and Oculus, but also PlayStation VR. So you'll actually see some PlayStation games of some capacity at E3, which will be PlayStation VR. But we're also getting a conference for Square Enix. So we already talked about that, where they're holding a concert a few days prior, a live concert of Final Fantasy music and stuff like that. And it seemed a bit weird because it's a few days before E3 in Los Angeles. Well, now we know that Square Enix is going to have a greater presence at E3. And now it's more a matter of, what can we really expect out of Square Enix at E3? Hopefully it's Final Fantasy VII Remake news, but, it can't be much. It can't be much when they just restarted development of this game, and they take so long with their games. I mean, so I'm not optimistic is what I'm saying, but it seems increasingly likely that we might see some Final Fantasy VII Remake news. Alright, with all that said, let's get into Let's Talk Plus, the weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway, where one of you could win a $10 PSN code. I'd like to congratulate Felix Del D. You have won a $10 PSN code. Congratulations. I'll be contacting you very soon via email or Twitter, so please keep your eyes peeled for that message. But hey, if you would like to win a $10 PSN code, it is so simple. You follow the link down below to the Gleam website. Supporting the channel a number of ways can gain you an entry to win a $10 PSN code. And like I always say, we do this every single week. Let me pay for your games. Those are all the news stories I wanted to talk about with you guys from this past week. So our Tuesday video was about PlayStation VR, why you should and shouldn't buy it. We do stay completely fair. I know VR is not for everybody, but I do think it's a situation where it's a much better buy this year than it was when it came out in 2016. So if you haven't seen that yet, go check it out. A lot of good reasons to give PlayStation VR a shot now. For our Tuesday video, don't know what that is. You'll get it, but once again, don't really know, so I'll figure that out over the weekend. and make something. But I will tease, actually, that I know a lot of you really enjoy the unboxing videos that we've been doing from eBay and things like that, so I do have some unboxing content coming up fairly soon. I got a lot of packages that are coming internationally, unfortunately, so it's taking a while for those to get here, but once they do, you can expect that probably the Tuesday after this upcoming one, or maybe the one after that. But more or less, just as a tease, you will get those unboxing videos that I know a lot of you are really enjoying recently. But other than that, that's pretty much it. That concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you all next Friday.